Here on the Echo Ratings Eventing podcast, we have teamed up with our great friends at Bedmax, along with our very own Spike the Vet, to give you guys, our lovely listeners, some tip-top tips on how to keep your horses happy and healthy in a stable environment. So, Spike, what have you got for us to get us started?
Well, here we are. Tip-top tips. And it's so important to reduce our risk of respiratory disease. Using a bedding with the lowest possible dust rating, such as Bedmax, is the absolute cornerstone to ensure a happy and healthy respiratory environment for a horse. Along with that, a really well-ventilated, stable environment so that we can maximize that clean air for the horse in the area where it's breathing as well. So in the corners, and it is criminal how many stables I go to, and these would be in very professional yards where we still see cobwebs, dust, all kinds of things in those corners around water drinkers, around feeding bowls, feeding troughs, hay bars, all these sort of things. And it's so important that we make sure that that's a better environment for them.
So not only a good quality bedding, but also you've got to whip out your feather duster or your Henry Hoover and make sure you get in all the nooks and crannies.
Or you got to get your feather duster out. Otherwise, I'll get my white gloves and I'll be checking out for how much dust there is. But seriously, it's very important. And it is unbelievable how often it's overlooked.
There you go, listeners. A tip-top tip for you from our very own Spike the Vet, courtesy of our lovely friends at Bedmax.
Thank you, Nicole, and look forward to coming back with some more tip-top tips.
Welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing podcast and a When Nicole Met show for you listeners. Very kindly, as always, supported by our good friends at Bedmax. Now, today's guest is a rider that I'm sure many of you will have heard of over the last few seasons in particular. She stepped up to the 4-star long level last year at Blenheim with a top 10 finish. She's done the same at Bramham this year. She is the Chatsworth winner. She has the same number of wins on British eventing records so far in 2023 as the likes of Piggy March and Tom McEwen. She didn't even know that. She's looking at me from across her kitchen island. Lizzie Baugh, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I am absolutely delighted that this has come off because we live very locally to one another. I actually used to come and use your school, which was out the back, a few fields over from where I lived, many, many moons ago. And every time I've seen you at events recently, I've been like, please come on the show. But we finally got her listeners. So, Lizzie, take us back to the start. Where did your love of horses come from?
I think definitely from my mum. I mean, growing up here, lived here all my life, family farm, dairy farm. So my dad, we had the dairy herd. My dad obviously had the cows and my mum had the livery business. So we've always been surrounded by horses. My mum evented. So when I was tiny, I do remember going to some events with my mum, kind of hanging on to my grandma's arm and watching my mum compete. So definitely from there, I think. And we always had ponies. So my first pony was a little black Shetland called Benny, who we do still actually have. He's now in his mid-30s.
Amazing. Was he very badly behaved or was he a good boy?
He was a good boy, but Jess had him first and Jess used to jump him and go whizzing around everywhere with him. And I was a little bit more unsure. So I used to go out hacking with him and he used to kind of jog along a bit and I'd get a little bit worried. But he was a good boy. He was really good.
I love that. I love that the cows, listeners, have slowly been replaced by horses a bit. Your poor dad over the last few years. In terms of the family setup, it's something that runs really strong now, I think, in terms of your business and your career and actually everybody working together here at the farm. But where did the line cross from sort of slightly nervous on a little Shetland called Benny to actually thinking that you wanted to get a little bit more serious about the eventing?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know as there is a definite point. I mean, I was always, and still am, quite a cautious person. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a confident person, but it kind of became more that I was more confident sat on a horse than when I wasn't sat on a horse. So after Benny, I had a nice little 12-1 pony called Gypsy, and we used to do like the local riding club, like Silver Horseshoe. I don't know if you remember those, and local riding club shows. And then, a 12-2 after that, and I got into a little bit of show jumping, and because I was the youngest, I'm the youngest of three, Jess and my oldest sister Daisy, they were kind of well away. So Jess was more into her show jumping already by that stage. So I kind of tagged along. We used to take my 12-2 for like the British novice first class of the day, and then we'd be there at the show all day waiting for Jess to jump her slightly bigger ones later in the day.
And where did Quarryman fit into the puzzle? Because Quarryman was the horse that gave you your first call up to a young rider team, and you went to 2 young riders, I think Mill Street 2017, Fontainebleau 2018, finished top 15 individually at both of them. So how did he come about? Because it feels like certainly Quarryman was the first horse that really gave you the taste of big success.
Yeah, definitely. And I was looking, so obviously after my 12-2, I had a 13-2 and then a 14-2. And I had 2 ponies and they got me into BE. I did my first BE events with those. We had a little dun pony, and my mum bought him when he was 5 and I was 12. And we did both of our first BE 80s together, 90s, and he took me around my first 100s as well. And then I had another good pony who we kind of picked up along the way. And I actually did a couple of pony trials with him. So he kind of gave me a little bit of a taste of it. And then I wasn't overly successful.
You and me both, Lizzie, if I'm honest. But
so after him, obviously, kind of when I was 16, we sold the ponies and bought Quarryman. So we bought him from Veer Phillips. He was a 5-year-old. Bought him in the November of his 5th year when I was 16. And then we started with him. He came out then at the beginning of his 6th year. Started with 90s, 100s, kind of moved up to novice and finished that season, his 6-year-old season, at the Young Horse Championships at Osberton in the Young Horse 2-star. So that was good. And he was brilliant. Like, I had such a relationship with him. And to be honest, I think he went further than we ever really anticipated. So he took me around, then my first intermediate. We did our first intermediate together when he was a 7-year-old. He did the Midlands under-18s team that year as well. And then we were a little bit like, well, I'm under 21, so I may as well enter the under 21 intermediate class. And we just had a go. And we were like, oh, may as well do it while I'm in the age. And he was brilliant. He was so consistent and so good.
I was going to say, one of the things that stands out for me remembering him was actually he would just turn up and you would be able to produce a good result time and time again, which earned you your first call up. Take us back to finding out that you were going to be heading to Mill Street, because it's a fairly big moment in any young rider's career, whether it is something that they want to make a career out of in terms of, following through and setting up a business within horses, whether there's another job on the horizon. It feels like a real kind of life moment.
Yeah. I think we were just so naive. We were just like, oh, brilliant. It was kind of, what year was it? 2017.
2017.
And we'd actually booked a family holiday when the long list training would have been, because we were like, oh, well, not likely to get long listed anyway. We'll book the holiday then. And then we did get long listed. So the family went on holiday and I had to stay at home. Took myself and a friend came with me down to Aston Walls for the long list training in the farm Land Rover in the trailer, and did that. And then the final trial was at Great Witchingham, and it was at the end of that week. So my mum flew home a day early from the holiday to come and help me at Great Witchingham. And he went well. I think we finished 6th in the final trial, and it was kind of, I think we were that naive. We were like, oh, it's another decent result for him. And then we had to stay over a night over in Norfolk. Everybody did, and then the next day they trotted all the horses up, and then they announced they told us who was going to be going. And
did they tell you in person?
Yes, they did at that one.
Oh,
so yeah.
That's really cool. That's a moment that, if it's good news, even if it's good news, you try and play it cool, and then actually what you really want to do is kind of go and jump up and down in a corner somewhere. But actually it must be pretty hard at kind of getting that news if you're not going in
Yeah,
person. But
definitely.
what was it like going over to Mill Street? Because that would have been your first trip abroad competing, is that fair?
Yeah, that was my first ever time competing abroad. So it was a bit of an eye-opener. And again, we were so kind of naive about the whole thing. And it was, in hindsight, it was a good job we were going with the squad, like first time abroad, because obviously they sorted everything and like we learned a huge amount. And obviously they knew everything, what they were doing and things like that. And yeah, just to arrive at Mill Street, and I'd never been to Mill Street before, and it's such an amazing place. To arrive there and it be a championship, and you know everybody from all different countries around Europe to be there, it was a real eye opener. A little bit stressful because he didn't actually travel the best over there. He wasn't very well when he got there, but the team were brilliant, and the vet like really good to get him kind of back on track.
Was it Spike Vet?
No, it was Ali.
Oh, it was Ali.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just trying to think if it was back in Spike's day. Spike, I was trying to give you some credit there, but
Spike was the juniors.
Okay. Fair enough. What about then making that decision to sell him? Because again, it feels like a really key moment. You know, this horse that you've produced from a 5-year-old, you know, inside out, actually making the call that you needed to sell him. And that, I think, is one of those decisions that actually really kind of cements moving the business forward. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that was definitely the turning point. So I almost sold him when I was out of Young Riders at the end of 2018. And I was like, hang on a minute, there is no other horse that I'd rather be sat on that I'm going to know as well to take me around my first advanced and 4 stars. So I kept hold of him for 2 more years. And I'm so glad I did, because he won the advanced under 25 at Belton. He took me around my first 4 stars. He was double clear around the 4-star at Chatsworth, and I think finished about 8th in that. And I learned so much from him, like even more than, like, I didn't realise I could learn even more from him. But he was so good, and I knew him inside out, and he knew me inside out. And he was just brilliant. And I think I almost at the time took for granted, like the whole time that I had him, like I used to go to an event and think, well, I know he's going to do a good dressage test, and I know he's going to jump clear or maybe have 1 down, and I know he's going to go clear inside the time cross country. So why shouldn't he go out and win? Like, and that was, he gave me so much confidence because we knew each other so well. And he was so good. He was careful, but like he was, you know, brave. He was with me. And in the 7 years that I had him, I never once fell off him.
That's pretty cool. That's some record. Cool. That's like a mum's dream.
He was so good, really good.
So what was that sort of moment? Because actually you'd been through Young Riders, and then sort of the time of setting up your business at home. We're going to talk about how kind of home works. So were you ever tempted to go off and do anything else and keep the horses for fun? Was that at that point in your life actually the plan, the A plan?
2020 that I actually sold him. And I think I tried to get him fit for, I was thinking about doing my first 4-star long with him, and it was just going to be a little bit too much for him. He just lacked a little bit of blood. And he was 12, and I thought, realistically, it's now or never. He's a good age. He's got a brilliant record. He's still, you know, he could go out and give another young rider or 2 young riders like the opportunities that he gave me. So I think that was what made the decision that he was a good age. He could go out and give somebody else the opportunities that he'd given me, and he wasn't quite going to be my Burley horse. As much as like you dream of your first horse, it's so nice when they do go all the way, but he just didn't quite have the gallop. He was an out-and-out young rider's horse, and brilliant at the short formats, but to gallop for 11 or 12 minutes, it was just at his limit. So I just thought, in his interests, it was the right time to let him be another girl's dream and another young rider's horse.
You mentioned the big B, the 5-star dream. Is that ultimately what made you come down this as a career path? The big 5 stars?
Yeah, I think so. I think, to get to the big events is the goal. And I really enjoy producing the young horses, and it's so special when they do come up and go all the way. And I'd say that's why I do it, is to kind of produce them up through the levels and try and get them up to the big ones.
Let's talk about the boy who is at the moment, hopefully, listeners, on the road to the big one. Be Exclusive, who was actually homebred by your mum here at the farm. He's given you 2 top 10 placings at your first 2 4-star long formats. You won Chatsworth on him this year. I mean, he's absolutely extraordinary. But go back to him being born. Tell us the story, because you would have been about 13 when he was born, there or thereabouts.
Yeah, 12 when he was born. Yeah, it was the year that I turned 13. And yeah, I mean, my mum evented the mare up to novice level, and she had 2 or 3 mares that she bred from, and this mare was actually half sister to her best mare, so technically she was kind of the lesser of the 2. She went to novice level, and the other mare my mum took advanced, and it was something like the mare reacted to something AI, so she had to go natural, which is why we ended up using Bazaar's Exclusive. And my mum had used him before, and he threw a nice foal, and she was really pleased with it. So that was kind of an obvious choice then, because he offered natural, to go for him again. And that's how we ended up with Buzz. So I remember Buzz starting life in the dry cow yard, and I remember taking him with my mum when we took the mare back to the stud, taking him as a foal at foot, and he would kind of wander around the room and say hello to everybody while they were dealing with the mare. And he was always kind of into everything. He was always quite a brave foal. And then growing up, we'd had 3 foals that year, and growing up, he was the leader of the pack. Quite well, to be fair, scared of his own shadow, but they all seemed to follow him still.
Was the plan always to keep him? Because I mean, that's the dream, isn't it? To, from your mum's perspective, to breed a horse that actually your daughter can go on and have great success and fun with, is an incredible story in itself. So was there ever a plan to sell him, or was he always earmarked to stay?
He was actually not going to stay. So interestingly, when he was a 2-year-old, he was this great big tall gangly long-legged looking thing that couldn't canter, and we thought, he's going to be far too big for anything we're ever going to want to do, because at the time it wasn't necessarily kind of known that this is what I was going to end up doing. I was only 13 or 14, and we thought, well, he's going to be too big for us. So we actually the man at the stud actually had a nice dun filly 2-year-old, so mum kind of showed a bit of an interest, saying, oh, would you swap them? Like, would you have ours and we'll have your nice little dun filly?
Yeah.
And nothing ever really came of that. And then as a 3-year-old, we were still thinking, it's too big. It's a nice horse, but it's too big, and it does really jump. So we tried to sell him, advertised him, had one person come and see him, but again, nothing came of it. Ended up keeping him. And then my oldest sister, Daisy, she actually backed him. So she did all the initial work with him, and then I took over the ride at the end of his 4th year, beginning of his 5th year. He was actually entered for his first event at Shelford unaffiliated at the end of May of his 5th year, but he was lame. Oh. So he missed that. So he went in a yard with another one, just for a bit of time to grow and everything like that. And then he actually came out and he did his first event at Brooksby, around the 80 there. And I remember him trying to get down the hill. There was quite a steep hill at Brooksby on the cross country.
Yeah.
Trying to get down that hill on him while he was trying to spook at every thistle that there was and jump the sheep tracks on his way down.
Yeah.
With these great big long legs, completely unbalanced.
Giving you all the indications of a 5-star horse in the making. Yeah.
But he was brilliant. I think he jumped double clear, and I think he did a 20-something dressage test. And then he went on he did a 90 then at Osby at the end of that year as well. And again, I think he was double clear. And then, yeah, he came out as a 6-year-old and really kind of cracked on and came out at a 90 at Oasby, and then he moved up to 100, and then he was going novice mid-season.
And then the plan was to keep him?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how big is he now? How big did he grow in the end?
It's about 17.1.
Big enough.
Big enough.
Big
yeah.
enough.
He's
okay.
He's tall. He's all legs.
He's all legs.
Yeah.
I just went and patted him in the field, listeners, and I can assure you he is as handsome in person as he looks on a live stream. So he missed the 2021 season. He had a bit of time off through injury. Came back in 2022 and took you to your first long format 4-star at Blenheim last year, where he finished 6th. I think he added 0.4 of a time penalty in the show jumping, but that was it. Your first 4-star long felt like it had been a bit of time coming. You sort of aimed at it with Quarryman and it hadn't quite happened. What did it feel like, actually, to go to Blenheim, which is a pretty iconic event in the British eventing scene, and to then have such a good result?
It was really good. I mean, he had been on good form coming into Blenheim. He'd had a 2nd in the advanced at Wellington, and that's the closest he'd come to winning an event for a number of years, because he'd always jump well, but he'll usually just be slightly off the pace in the dressage because he just gets a little bit hot. So he'd very nearly got a win at Wellington, so he knew he was on good form. And then to go to Blenheim and then to do a sub-30 dressage, which he did, was brilliant. And then, to be honest, cross-country, the aim was just to get round. Ideally, with a qualifying result, would be great. But we went round, and I didn't have any minute markers or anything. I had my stopwatch on, but I didn't have any minute markers. And he came home 2 seconds inside the time, I think he was. So I just kind of got him in a rhythm, and I think that was kind of proved that he is a galloping horse, just to sit in the rhythm and just kind of keep going for that length of time. And then, yeah, he came out on the final day and he jumped out of his skin and he was brilliant, and just 1 second over the time in the show jumping. But, I wasn't worried about that. I mean, that was far more than what we expected for that week. We just went for a completion, and to come back with a 6th, top 10 in our first 4 long was brilliant.
Again, some really, really good company as well. This year has been full of quite a lot of highs already. First of all, going to your first badminton to do the guinea pig test. Take us back to going to badminton as the guinea pig ride. How does that even happen, and what was it like?
Oh, it was literally such an amazing experience. You could not put a price on that. We learned so much, and just to get in that arena and ride through the test in that arena was so good, and just to be at the event. And yeah, it was first thing in the morning, but it's still, going through the gate into the arena and just being there was so good. And it was actually through I'm on a 4-star talent pathway program sponsored by the Howden Way, and there's kind of a group chat, and Daryl Scaife put on a message on the chat and said, anybody interested in doing the guinea pig test at badminton, put your name forward, kind of thing. And I kind of left it till last minute because I was like, oh no, I'm not sure. And then last minute I was like, could I put my name forward? And then my name got picked, so it was kind of surreal to go. It was really good.
It lives up to, there's sort of a lot of expectation around that moment, but actually hopefully you'll be back at future badmintons in the main competition, and you'll already have the experience of going in through the archway in the stables and all of those kind of bits and pieces that come with a trip to badminton. Chatsworth the following week, you say he hadn't won anything for a while. He'd been close, but he hadn't won anything for a while. I mean, it's a pretty cool place in a pretty hot field to take your first win with the horse since probably novice level, because he topped the 4-star at Chatsworth, and he was brilliant on a weekend that, it would be said, looking back, tough weekend to be competitive in, so much as the ground was pretty sticky. Chatsworth is always a pretty tough venue anyway, lots of hills, Ian Stark cross-country track. Go back to Chatsworth for a second before we talk about the next big one in Bramham, because you live probably an hour away, just under an hour away from Chatsworth.
Yeah.
Had it always been sort of one of your big events that you particularly loved, first of all?
Yeah, I love Chatsworth, and I think it's one of the best events on the circuit. And actually, had always been a nice one for me because I did the 2-star shorts there with Quarryman, and I was 5th in that one year. I actually remember that year because I had to request dressage on the Friday morning because I had to get back for a geography exam.
As you do.
In the afternoon. So I went and did my dressage at Chatsworth with him on the Friday morning. It must have been an A-level exam that I had in the afternoon. So Mum dropped me off at school on the way back from Chatsworth, went and sat my exam, and then went back to Chatsworth obviously on the Saturday for the jumping, and he jumped double clear and was 5th. And then the following year, that would be 2016, we went back the following year, and Quarryman won the 2-star short there. So it had always been quite a happy place. And then Quarryman was, I want to say, was 8th in the 4-star short when I did that with him as well. And so, yeah, it's always been one of my favourites, and I've had a few other rides around there as well. And it's always a good cross-country track, always well built. And I do like Ian's courses. I think that, you can ride at them, attack them, and if you ride them well, then they ride well. And I like that. And yeah, I mean, all the hills and everything like that, it just seemed to suit Fuzz because he's such a natural galloper. So yeah, the ground wasn't ideal. I mean, it was so wet, and when we got there, I was a little bit like, how are they going to run this? Like, the stabling field was so wet.
I mean, you say so wet, I say Blau Field.
Yeah.
Bless them, because it was absolutely quagmire.
Yeah, it was. And they did such a good job to run it. And so the week before, he'd been to Badminton, he'd done the guinea pig test, and a week or 2 weeks before that, he'd been to Cirencester, and I'd done the dressage and the show jumping, but hadn't run him cross country because of the ground. He's not actually the biggest fan of mud. So he'd kind of done Cirencester where he hadn't run cross country, and he'd done Badminton where he'd just gone for the dressage test. So actually, when it came to Chatsworth, because he usually gets quite hot in the dressage, it worked really well that he was actually quite settled because he'd been to a couple and not actually ran cross country. So he actually went in and he did score a personal best at 4-star level. I think he scored 27.1, and he deserved it. He did a really relaxed test, and a test where I could actually get my leg on him, which makes a change for him, and I could actually ride him into the corners and ride each movement. And the fact that it was a little bit muddy also, I think, went in our favour because he found it a little bit more hard work and he couldn't quite get away from me.
There's a lot of atmosphere in the dressage at Chatsworth as well. It always feels, you've got all of the trade stands around the outside, and it always feels quite intense.
Yeah, definitely. And then the show jumping as well, the show jumping was in the main arena, and he tried really hard because he isn't a horse that naturally enjoys the mud, like with his long legs, and he's not a natural jumper out of mud. He does find it a little bit more difficult, and he tried really hard. He just had one fence down, but like he jumped brilliant round, and I was a little bit like, oh, well, just one down isn't too bad. And then as the day went on, I was like, oh, that was actually really good.
Basically like a clear round.
Yeah. That was brilliant. And then cross country, I think I was about second out.
You were really early.
Really early.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had my plan, and I was just like, I'm going to have to ride it well in order for it to ride well. And I'm going to have to, be on it on the lines with him and give him confidence and everything like that with the ground. And he flew around there. He was absolutely brilliant. And he is a really, really good cross-country horse. And he was so good on the lines and literally made it feel a little bit too easy almost. And to be honest, I hadn't necessarily gone out to go fast. I'd gone out to get in a good rhythm and give him a good confident round and, not hammer him in the ground really. And he is quite deceiving to ride, that he does just naturally cover the ground, and he just got into a good rhythm, a good gallop, never really asked more of him than what he was offering, just kept him where he wanted to be. And I think he came home with 11 point something time penalties. And again, I was like, oh, that's not too bad. At least, he's home sound in one piece and had a good confident run. And then we were watching, and I was watching the scores, and I was like, oh, he's going to be a top 10 here. And then it was like, oh, he's 6th at worst. And then we went back over to the main bit to get a bit of lunch after we'd cooled him off and everything like that. And he'd had some grass and he was back on the lorry, and we were watching just the last few go on the big screen down there. And we were like, oh, that one's had a lot of time penalties. And slowly he was creeping up, and then it was kind of the last couple to go, and we were like, who's going to be top 3? And then we could not believe it when he was he'd worked his way all the way up to the top, having been so early to go. And I think he was one of the fastest rounds, I think, wasn't he?
He was. I think there might have been 1, maybe 2 quicker than him, but not a lot at all. And he looked like you cruised round. He didn't look like that. He looked plenty more in there if you'd have wanted it.
Yeah, and it was almost just kind of protecting him in the ground, and he literally he just went where he was happy, and he ended up winning it.
I mean, probably the biggest win of your career to date. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah.
How have you found sort of the interest and the kind of the hype around it? Because, you know, plonkers like me build everything up quite a lot, and, you know, there's a lot of excitement, but actually you're very much on the radar now. Going into Bramham, having won Chatsworth, which people look to as kind of a form line for Bramham, did it feel any different? Did you feel any more pressure?
Not really, but I kind of almost stay away from it a little bit.
She does. I literally had to come to her house, listeners, to track her down to do this show.
I try not to kind of get too involved and just kind of keep my head down and keep working away and let the results kind of come as they do. So no, I was like, the main aim from Bramham is just to get a qualifying result, and anything else is a bonus, really.
Were you surprised by how well he went cross-country at Bramham, particularly, I mean, in terms of the time and the stamina test? Because Bramham is a real test. It's a real cross-country test. And again, he was inside the time, made it look very comfortable. Did it feel as comfortable as it looked?
Yeah, weirdly, yes. And I almost think that was, you know, I'm never going to have a horse that makes it feel that easy. And I've always kind of thought with him, always come a bit early in my career. Like I feel like I don't want to waste him, if that makes sense. So I'm only 20, 25 now. And I feel like in a few years' time, I'm going to wish I had him all over again, because he is just such a good horse, and he's giving me so much experience, which is obviously great. He's doing wonders for me. And yeah, I think to go around Bramham like that, I've never had to get a horse that fit before either, which was a big thing. And he is naturally quite a fit horse. So it was always a little bit like, how is he going to, Blenheim is a little bit flatter. Bramham really is a stamina test. So how is he going to stay? Is he going to, keep galloping and things like that? And everything like that was kind of going through my head. And I did have minute markers this time. So I was kind of, again, like just after the qualifying result. So I was a little bit like, well, we'll see how he's travelling. You know, the main aim is to get round and things like that. And actually, I wasn't far away from the minute markers, and he kind of, they kept going off, and I was like, oh, I'm not far away. So, and he feels good, and he kept galloping right until the end, and gave me a really, really good ride.
What does that mean as to what might come next? Do you want me to make you say it out loud?
We just say there's a small event maybe in Lincolnshire at the beginning of September that begins with a B.
Perfect. We'll look forward to it. As a rider, there's big events. Burghley was the one you mentioned a little bit earlier on. And you'd be, 50 minutes down the road. So I imagine it was a big part of your childhood, actually, as well, going to Burghley. Probably did a few one-day events at the Burghley Pony Club there, all of that kind of thing. To actually think now, I know we're 8 weeks out or something, and not going to put too much pressure on, but what would it mean to actually get to that bit? What does it put into words as an experience and a feeling that it gives you?
I don't know, really. I think it's so, I don't know whether I can put it into words. I don't think I'll believe it until we're there, especially on a homebred. But then, because I was kind of, am I ready? But I feel like he's ready. The way he went around Bramham, he's ready to step up, and I'm more like, am I ready? But then I don't want to hold him back, but I want to, make sure I do a good job. And yeah, I won't believe it until we actually get there. And to have had him all the way through is good. And I was like, obviously we know each other inside out. That's going to kind of go in our favour, definitely. I've been going to Burley like we used to go every year. And the last few years, it's kind of got a little bit more like, oh, we'll go on one of the dressage days and then have a look around the course and, have a little bit of a see what we're going to have to possibly do one day and then watch it on the live stream at home kind of thing. So to almost be possibly thinking about doing it is doesn't really seem real at the moment.
A good level of healthy respect, though, is not a bad thing, because I think if you go in feeling too ready and too confident, actually you sort of lose that edge of kind of not humility, but it's almost good to respect it.
Yeah,
is what I'm trying to say. You want to kind of go in and think, right, okay, got to get this right. In terms of other riders out there, who do you look at and sort of they're the ones that you really respect in terms of watching how fencers ride, would go to advice and have admired the most?
I think definitely Ros. She always looks like, she never looks like she's having to do much, which I suppose is like a huge skill, isn't it? She's got the horse exactly where she wants it and so well schooled. She's obviously done all her training at home and got, so that she's able to make it look so easy, and it's so smooth, and she just stays in such a good balance. And I've had, both Jess and I have had last season a couple of lessons with Ros, and we both brought away so much just from, an hour with her. And she's one now that when I'm at an event and if I need a little bit of advice, I know that I can go and ask her. And also I spent a few days with Willa Newton when I was at university. So when I was at university, they wanted me to do a little bit of work experience type thing. They ideally do a placement year or a summer placement. And I said, well, I'm not doing a summer placement. I haven't got time. So I said I'd do a week's work experience, say in an office, and a week's work experience on a yard. So I dropped Willa Newton an email, and she was really kind and let me go to her yard for a few days. Obviously, it's not too far from here. And I did a week in an office actually at Doncaster Racecourse when it was the Ledger meet, the racing meet. So that was good to,
What did you study at uni?
Equine Sports Science at Nottingham Trent was my undergrad degree. And then I actually stayed on part-time to do a master's degree in equine performance, also at Nottingham Trent. And that was basically, when I finished my A-levels, I had no idea. Like, I had the horses there, here at home, but I didn't want to be one of those people that said, oh, I like horses, I'm going to work with horses. I wanted to be able to, if I'm going to work with horses, I've got to be able to make it viable as a business, and I want to be good at it. And I was always kind of a little bit like, oh, I'm not sure I'd be good enough to actually, make a go of it as a business and things like that. So I went to university, Nottingham Trent, which is 15 minutes from here, and got my degree because I thought at the end of the day, I'm going to have a science degree to my name then. It gives, opens a few doors, at least I've got something. So I did that. And actually, I'm really glad I did, because I learned a lot of the theory behind the practical stuff that we do every day without really thinking about it. It was really good, really useful. And then I was still a little bit unsure after that. I was like, right, now, I've got to think about a way to make this a business. If I'm going to do it, I was like, I'll give it a go. So I'll do my master's part-time over 2 years to give me time to build up a bit of a business alongside doing it. And when I was doing my master's, is at the point when I sold Quarryman. So when I sold him, I was like, right, if I'm going to sell him, I've got to, give it my best shot, because I love everything of him. And it was such a heartbreaking decision to make. I was like, if I'm going to do it, if I'm going to sell him, then I've got to make a go of, have a really good go at it, making it a business. And essentially selling him did set up my business. and I finished my master's degree, and then I've just done horses then. So schooling, competition, sales.
So how many have you got in at home at the minute?
I've got 12 in at the moment. It kind of varies really. I have kind of up to 14 in at a time. Ideally, I want to start building up more, kind of having more owners for competition horses. And at the moment, I still have to do a few sales liveries, schooling liveries, that kind of thing, to pay the rent and keep things going.
And how does it work? Because obviously your mum still has her livery business here as well. Your sister Jess has got her own part of the yard too. So how do the piece of the puzzle all fit together?
Yeah, so the liveries are separate, and then Jess and I have our own yard. Again, it's in the same area, but Jess has one side, I have the other, and that works really well for if I need any help with anything. Jess can be kind of eyes on the ground and have a little look, and vice versa. You know, if Jess says, "Oh, can you have a look at this? What do you think?" Then I'll go and have a little look, and essentially, if there's anything that I can't get a tune out of or I'm struggling with, Jess will be able to. And the same the other way, if Jess can't quite, get something where she wants it, then I can have a sit on and things, and it works really well. And usually between us, we can, get things in where we want them. And
I have to ask as well, your dad has obviously had the dairy herd here for many years. That was sold last year. It seems to be more horses coming in, less cows. But there is one very special cow that I had to ask listeners, because there's basically a pet cow. Number
168.
168. Okay, yeah. Tell us about 168.
168 was born in 2002, so she'll be 22 this year. And she was Dad's favourite cow. And she's still here. She's, he goes out and feeds her every day, and she's in a little paddock near all the horses in our own little area. And she's the last one of the dairy herd that he's kept.
She's literally the coolest thing, listeners. I'll try and get a picture before I go. I'll put it on the Instagram. What about one to watch in your yard? Because you've certainly, I think, caught the eye of a number of people picking up some really nice wins, some really consistent placings. And as I said at the start of the show, same number of wins so far this year as Piggy March, Tom McEwen. Only 3 riders have more wins. Oliver Townend, Izzy Taylor and Wills Oakden. You're only 6 behind Oliver Townend. I mean, that's not far off. Can you give us one horse in your yard for the listeners to follow?
I would say Khalida Spice. She's 6 this year. I've had her from a 4-year-old, and she's stepped up to novice level. She won the 6-year-old class at Belsay. She's a really nice girl. She moves well. She's careful jumping, and to be fair, at the beginning of her career, I was like, is she going to be a little bit careful? She's always a little bit careful where she was putting her feet, but actually she's grown so much in confidence, stepping up to novice level, and I feel like we're getting that partnership now as well. Because in the beginning, a little bit, we were occasionally on different pages, and she's got a little bit of a quirk to her. She's a mare, and sometimes I was like, we're not quite on the same wavelength here, but actually she's coming with me now, and she's where I want her, and she's enjoying the job. She's learning it. She's taking it all in, and I just think she might be one of those that just keeps going up and up, a little bit like Quarryman, who he just kind of kept stepping up and up and kept going right up to the 4-star level.
There you go, listeners. Khalida Spice. I take it she'll go to the 6-year-old championships, which has moved to Cornbury this year.
Yeah, that'll be her aim for the year.
Exciting. Okay. Look, Lizzie, thank you so much. Good luck for the next few months. I am fairly certain you've got a whole legion of podcast fans that will be cheering you on the road to that little place in Lincolnshire that rhymes with Worley. Wishing you all the very, very best, and we'll look forward to following along.
Thank you.
Listeners, I hope you enjoyed an insight into one of Britain's brightest young stars. We'll be back very soon with lots more on the Equating to Venting podcast and on the When Nicole Met show as well. Do send in any requests. If you've got any suggestions of people that you would like us to speak to, then please send them in. We'd love to hear from you. And as always, the most enormous thank you to you guys for listening, but also Bedmax for their continued support of the series.